Hey, it's Mo. I am so glad you're here today. I just like to hang out and talk about makeup, and I like it when you're here with me. And today I thought we'd talk about another release from the drugstore for, we'll call it a complexion product. I just reviewed last week, I think it was, the ColourPop Pretty Fresh Tinted Moisturizer. And this week, all week long, I've only worn one foundation, and it's the Maybelline Dream Radiant Liquid. So this is what it looks like. You can see down here I got shade 30 Ivory Beige. I was kind of lucky in this case because I wasn't looking for this. I knew about it, but I happened to walk into Walgreens. I was getting something random, and they had a display, certainly not of all the shades, but they had, maybe 10. So I was able to kind of eyeball it and just kind of see what I thought would work for me. And for me, when I'm looking for a foundation and I actually see them, the first thing that I tend to notice is the undertone, because I tend to go for like definitely more neutral but almost a gray leaning undertone, and this was the most in that category. It's not as gray as like CYO Life Proof, that has a nice gray undertone. Misha BB Cream, by the way, if you're looking for something with that kind of just gray leaning undertone, that's another good one. And I know some people have been looking for a replacement for CYO Life Proof, or they've never really found their undertone match. Believe me, I get it. It took me forever to find my undertone. So this is the one that I chose. So there's, a row of colors, and this one just kind of jumped out at me. I thought it might be too dark for me, but I've used it, as I said, all week, and weirdly, it's like a really good match. I'm very, very surprised by that, because it doesn't look as gray as some of those other ones. But anyway, I thought we'd look this over. It does come in a glass bottle, as you can see, and it does have a pump. And this was, as I said, at Walgreens, and I got it for $12.99. So depending on where you purchase it, I know it's available at Ulta, I believe it's available at Target, those kinds of places. It's probably going to be somewhere in that ballpark, around $13. It's 1 ounce. That's standard. Generally, when you buy a foundation, it's going to be 1 ounce, so there's nothing out of the ordinary about that. And I thought I would just quickly kind of go over it with you and put it on for you. Not that that's any great shakes, but I know I always like to see how someone applies the foundation and kind of what it looks like and whatever. So let's do that. So here I pumped. That's not really even a full pump out on my hand, but just so you get the idea. And you can clearly tell this is not runny, but it's not thick. So I would put this kind of in the category of a more moussey texture. Not exactly that. It's actually, to me, it's an interesting texture. It almost feels like it's, I'm going to say, lightly whipped texture. And I'll show you. I don't know if you can see, but like it's super light. When I touch it, it's almost like peaks like a meringue or whatever like that. It's just very, very, very light. And when I put it on, meaning texture, not color, not shade. There's, I'd have to look at the number of shades, but I think it had a fairly good shade range. And when I put this on, in fact, the first time I put it on, and this never, ever happens to me, I couldn't tell where the foundation was and where it wasn't, because the color was such a good match. And that surprised me in a very unusual way. So I don't know why this particular one is a great match for me, but I got lucky, basically, because there are so many skin tones and so many shades and varieties and variations and undertones, and I mean, you could go on forever trying to find the right one, and many of us have, I know. And then when you find one and it goes away, then it's really disappointing. But anyway, I'm just gonna put this on half for the time being so you can see what it looks like. And I'm coming to you just with, I just have skincare on. If you've watched me before, you know I consider sunscreen to be skincare, so I don't usually specify that I have sunscreen on because that's all part of my skincare. And I just put this on with my fingers. I apply most of my foundations with fingers. I know some people really are opposed to that. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not looking for a super heavy application, and I feel like I have the most control with my fingers to get around, like the nose and under the eye and that kind of thing. Sponges, generally speaking, for me, I feel like maybe they soak up a bit too much product. But if I'm going to use something other than my fingers, I use a brush. But for this particular foundation, fingers have worked quite well for me. Also, probably my biggest thing that I'm covering up, if you want to call it that, is redness around my nose. I just sniffled, as you can tell. I'm always sniffling. So this is just, that's how much is left on my hand. Here's what I've applied, and I'm just going to show you what it looks like. So there, yes, foundation. There, no. Yes, no. So it's one of those, and I tend to go for medium foundations, and I'll often say like on the lighter side of medium as opposed to the heavier. This is probably one of the more skin-like foundations I've ever found, which again just completely surprised me. I didn't expect this much out of this foundation. Now they call it radiant, so I don't know that I really agree with that. So here's just my skin, and here it is with the foundation. I'm not seeing a great difference in radiance, and when I've worn it all week, I don't feel like it's particularly glowy or radiant. I would call it probably, maybe, if I had to qualify it, a satin finish maybe. It's definitely not matte, but I don't find it glowy or dewy. I wouldn't describe it with either of those adjectives. It's just very, I mean, the best way that I can describe it is skin-like, which I feel like is always the thing so many people, including myself, are looking for, but it's really elusive. It's hard to find makeup that doesn't look very makeup-y. And this one, for whatever reason, seems to fit that bill. With some coverage, I'd put this in the light medium coverage based on what I consider light medium. For some people, this would just be too light, I'm sure. And I've worn this for a full week. I've worn it on the weekend. I've worn it, you know, all week at work. I have a desk job, so it's not like I'm outside sweating or freezing or anything like that. Well, I am freezing because my office is always freezing. Why is that? Why are offices so cold? I wore a sweater under a sweater, and I was still freezing in my office this week. Anyway. So, but anyway, desk job. Gone from home like 10 hours a day. I usually have this on for like 12 hours a day. So there's both sides done. And when I say done, I mean to the degree that I would do it on a normal day. This is the way I've worn it. So I still have, you can see, that much left on my hands. There's no sunscreen in this. They do describe it as a hydrating foundation, by the way, and they say that there's hyaluronic acid and collagen included somewhere in the mix of ingredients for this one. So that's what it looks like. Is it hydrating? You know, it's so difficult to qualify this one because I don't notice it. I put it on, I think, wow, that matches, I like it. And then I go about my day. I certainly don't feel dry in any way. It doesn't feel overly moisturized. As I said, it's not dewy or anything like that. And I can even, it's unusual, but in this case, I usually put concealer around my nose because you noticed how red it gets around there. But with this foundation, I certainly will put on concealer, but there were a couple days I didn't. I just felt like, okay, this one I put on, I go, it covers it up well enough. I don't know what wonder is happening in this bottle. I am amazed that I liked something straight off the bat like this. But I did, and I do, and I give this very high marks. I mean, the packaging is packaging most of us like, right? It's glass, it's got a pump, it's the standard size, and really, I love the texture. I absolutely love the texture, and in my case, which is absolutely individual, I lucked out really well with a shade match, which is always easier to do in person than it is online. Believe me, I've ordered enough foundations online. I'm just going to do a couple swatches. It's hard to swatch foundation, but just for the sake of argument. So this, I'm just going to swatch, if you want to call it, what's left on my hand, which again, doesn't look like a match, does it? And yet, it matches perfectly. Now, in this lighting, it looks like it's darker than my neck, but in real life, it's a good match. I was going to compare it actually to the CYO Life Proof in 102. A while ago, I did a comparison of the CYO and the Soap and Glory because they had discontinued, or discontinuing, I should say, CYO. So this is CYO 102, which, as you can see, looks like it's right into my skin. And this is the Maybelline. Now, why they both seem to work on me, your guess is as good as mine. This looks far too peachy for me, but on my skin, it was just like, oh, now could that be the formula? It might be. It's such a beautiful, elegant formula that, I don't know, it just whoosh, it's just like putting on nothing, but it really, I think it gives the coverage definitely that I want. So obviously, I really like this. I'm so pleased. I've been pleased with it every day that I've worn it. I've tried it with primers. I've tried it without primers. I don't need a primer with it. Didn't seem to make much of a difference, frankly. And if I can skip a step, so much the better. So I just put it on every morning, and I'm happy all day long. And I take it off at the end of the day, and I'm like, oh yeah, I had foundation on. I forgot. So that's what I have to say about the Maybelline Dream Radiant Liquid Foundation. Very pleased with it. Pleased that I'm pleased. Surprised that I'm pleased. And I hope that was helpful, because that's my only purpose here. And I really appreciate that you swing by and hang out and we talk makeup, because I really genuinely love this stuff. I hope you are having a good day, and I will talk to you soon.